Hey listeners, how are you all? Thank you so much for being our awesome members. There's a lot to come more. Sit tight, be comfy, put your headphones, now let's begin. Go west, young man. Village of the Hidden Leaf, administrative offices. Mon, muttered Nara Shikamaru, as he slouched against armrest of a well-worn bench. I can't believe we're reporting for missions already. Already, replied Yamanaka Ino, from beside her teammate. I can't believe they waited this long to call us back. I can't believe they reopened this place without fixing the vending machines. Leaning forward, Shikamaru and Ino silently glared at the ninja sitting at the far end of the bench. But as usual, Akamichi Choji ignored them, instead rummaging through his near-empty bag of potato chips. After a moment, Shikamaru sighed and leaned back, while Ino just shook her head. Neither bothered actually responding. It had been little more than a week since the end of the Chunin exam. And the battle that had erupted from it. Though quick evacuations had prevented many civilian casualties, street-by-street fighting between the sand, sound, and leaf ninjas had left large swaths of wreckage throughout Konoha. Following the funeral service for the third Hokage, most of the younger ninjas had been ordered to help with the relief efforts and then left to their own devices. Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji been doing just that until the previous night, when they all received a summons to appear at the main office the next morning. Ahem. All three ninjas looked up as Iruka stood up at the dispatch desk. Wari Reiken, Hiala Niroshaya, and Keita Maniori addressed the Chunin. Please come forward. The officers are ready to see you now. At the sound of their names, three young ninjas quietly got up and walked across the room. As he watched the trio, Choji scratched his chin. Maniori, I thought he was a year behind us. He is, lazily responded Shikamaru. Didn't you hear? Asked Ino as she folded her arms. They graduated 6 new genin 3 days ago. A couple kids that got sent back from our year and then a bunch of even younger ones. 2 new rookie teams, assigned to Junins. That, Ino tilted her head to point to the dispatch desk, was one of them. Early graduation, Choji repeated as he tossed aside his empty chip bag. That's not fair. Why couldn't we have gotten that? Quote, "'Cause we still had a Hokage when we were graduating," Ino quickly answered. Let me tell you, Konoha is desperate. We're short on ninjas, short allies, and we know, Ino, Shikamaru interrupted. We live here too. Choji leaned forward and smirked. Yeah, but she figures you've spent too much time looking at the sky to notice. Knowing Shikamaru well, enough to know he wouldn't respond to taunting, Choji leaned back immediately. But how do you know it's that bad, Ino? Ino raised her eyebrows in a knowing way. 'Cause my dad is leading one of the new teams. Choji paused, thinking, are the new kids any good? One of them is a Kuiisis. Tarmar, I think. He's supposed to be a bit of a genius. But, Ino shook her head. Not to the level of Sasuke. Neji, Lee. The rest, Ino sighed. I'd be surprised if any of them were even as good as us. Oh, Choji leaned back and went silent for a moment. At length, he spoke up again. So they promoted rookies worse than us, which means they'll be kept on the easy missions. Which'll free up more experienced ninjas for the important missions. Choji nervously glanced around the room, noting the absence of any uninjured veteran ninjas. Which, sadly, would be us, finished Ino. I told you Konoha was desperate. Choji looked around again, and then quietly gulped. Mon. Oh, the same, later, your mission, began one of the council officers, whom neither Ino, Shikamaru, nor Choji had met before. Nor did they recognize the 2 Junins that flanked the administrator. The only FFER the trio actually recognized was Iruka, who seemed unusually concerned. Is at the behest of Lord Jia, who rules a fiefdom in the northern provinces of Steppe Country. You will, therefore BW, orking outside the physical boundaries of Fire Country. I trust none of you have a problem with that. Shikamaru lamely raised a hand. If we did, would we still have to go? One of the Junin, a GR. Izzled old soldier with one arm and a drooping face, chuckled to himself. Iruka scowled. We don't have a problem with going abroad, interjected Ino, seeking to defuse the situation. But, why send us to Steppe Country? I thought we were hard-pressed to fulfill missions here in Fire Country. Isn't taking on even more missions just Ino trailed off for a moment to avoid fumbling over her words. Isn't that just stretching our forces even thinner, and making the whole situation worse? The second Junin, a younger unkempt fellow, smirked. Perceptive girl, he muttered to himself. The council officer spoke up again. Yes, Leaf forces are stretched thin at the moment. But that is why it is imperative that we continue to take foreign missions. Choji furrowed his brow. New recruits generally don't grasp the concept, the officer continued, but foreign missions are central to the well-being of Fire Country, as well as many nearby countries. Foreign missions are more than just missions. They are exercises in military power. That military power is what keeps the region secure. All too often, the overt threat of overwhelming military force is all that keeps feudal lords from developing their own forces. A lack of forces loyal only to them ensures they settle their differences peaceably, or at least with only limited violence. The Leaf is largest of all ninja villages. It is our forces that keep this land at peace. Makes sense, muttered Shikamaru. Under the officer's withering gaze, he only shrugged. What? It does. Not really, Choji contradicted. We've been outside Fire Country. Choji paused a second. Well, only once before, but nobody was thinking about war. Precisely, my boy, answered the elder Junin. With Leaf and the Junin coughed. Allies at call. A conventional war is unthinkable. Whomever agitates for one will be utterly crushed. There is no way to avoid it. No conventional force can handle a ninja onslaught. Thus, open sea. Conflicts only arise between ninja villages. The unkempt Junin picked up the thread. Foreign missions, even benign ones, remind the minor lords of this. It gives them a look of what we are capable of. And it proves that we are interested in what happens beyond our borders, and will act there if there is need for us to. As long as the feudal leaders know open violence is futile, they will avoid it at all costs. Which is why we must continue to fulfill foreign obligations. Even to the expense of domestic ones, finished the officer. The moment we begin shirking our duties, that we decline to use force when we are expected to. We send a message to all potential agitators. We tell them that we won't always get involved. And that means that the use of force, their use of force, just be a viable means of attaining their goals. The officer looked at each of the trio, his face deadly serious. In short, it would signal that war is not unthinkable. And that would make the world a much scarier place. Choji seemed to shrink back. So, we have to go stop a war. The injured Junin gave a hearty laugh. No, boy, nothing so dramatic as that. Good, muttered Shikamaru. So what is our mission? Asked Ino, with a slight twinkle in her eye. Now that the civics lesson is over. The officer glanced at Ino, unamused. As I said, you will go to the aid of Lord Jia, in Steppe Country. Several weeks ago, a number of people went missing from the countryside near his manor. Rather, a number of weeks ago it was noticed that the people were missing. Due to the nature of rural life, it is impossible to determine an exact date for the event. What? Half-heartedly prompted Shikamaru. They couldn't bother talking to the farmers who lived next door. The unkempt Junin cleared his throat and replied. There were no neighbors to speak of. Outside of a few key valleys, the province is virtually uninhabited. The missing people all vanished from the same habitation, a SM. All gold panning outpost on a mountainside. No more than 25 people, mostly rogues, squatters, or other vagrants. None of them had anything more than sporadic contact with the local lord. The settlement, was found ravaged and abandoned by some traders who passed through. Bandits are not unknown in that area, continued the injured Junin. They mostly prey on travelers and villagers on the fringes of settlements. This, however, represents a major strike. The council officer nodded and continued the thread. Lord Jia is concerned that any attempts to use his own security forces to seek out the perpetrators would leave his citizenry open to direct attack. And given the audacity of the bandits, his concerns are not unfounded. Bandits, said Choji with a trace of unease. I thought you said it wouldn't be so dramatic. The injured Junin chuckled. That isn't dramatic. Highwaymen are standard fare for foreign missions. Sometimes even in domestic ones. Choji scowled, unhappy at being corrected yet again. The officer sighed, tiring of the multiple tangents the briefing had taken. Lord Jia has sent a request and a deposit for AB level mission, and we are sending you 3 to fulfill this obligation. I want to emphasize that this is a punitive mission. The officer picked the mission scroll off the table and pointed it at the trio for emphasis. You will seek out the individuals responsible and either bring them to justice, or inflict justice upon them. You will not be asked to justify any casualties you leave behind. Their mouths falling slightly open, Shikamaru and Choji's eyes widened in surprise. Oh, said Ino, being the only one able to articulate herself. AB level mission, so I guess our sensei will joining us after the briefing. No, replied the unkempt Junin, looking to the side. Asuma is currently engaged in a different matter. Ino blinked. Then, you're trusting AB mission to Genin. That's not quite true. Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji all looked at Iruka, who had spoken for the first time since calling them forward. Leaning slightly to the side, and seemingly trying to avoid eye contact, the Ninja Academy instructor continued. In spite of recent events, the senior Junin have found the time to discuss various performances in the Chunin selection exam. And coming from those deliberations was the decision to, Iruka closed his eyes in resignation. Promote Nara Shikamaru to Chunin. With eyes even wider, Shikamaru and Choji openly gaped. But, stuttered Ino as she looked frantically from Junin to Junin. But Shikamaru lost. He gave up. As well he should have, said the wounded Junin. Leaning back and stroking his disfigured cheek with his remaining hand, the Junin wistfully continued. Without any chakra left, a tactical withdrawal was Nara's wisest course of action. It allowed him to escape unscathed from a very cunning adversary. But up to that point, he had thoroughly outfought Tamari. Quite a feat, as she outclasses Nara in every aspect. Further, to have done so without any surprise maneuver or overwhelming blood type limit, the Junin smiled, as much as he was able to. Pure talent, he said, addressing Shikamaru directly. That's what you've got, boy. May it take you far. At the officer's bidding, Iruka stood up and handed Shikamaru the mission scroll and a neatly folded flak jacket. The mission is yours, Shikamaru. Iruka informed. Ino and Choji are currently yours to command. The mission as we received it from Lord Jia is in the scroll. We expect the 3 of you to be on your way by nightfall. And, Iruka trailed off, trying to find the right words. Good luck. With that, Iruka sat back down in resignation. Whoa, muttered Choji. Wow, added Ino. Shikamaru stared blankly at his new uniform. Mon. Hard ground. The forest west of Konoha, late afternoon. The area's clear, reported Ino as she jumped down from the top of a tree. There's a road about 3 clicks to the west. Smoke from a village about 20 clicks north, and that's about it. Nothing unnatural. Ino smirked as she glanced at her 2 companions. Like there would be, this close to Konoha. What could possibly? Ino. Don't say that. Ino slowly closed her mouth and gave an enthusiastic shrug. Ah, right. Wouldn't want to jinx us. The trio had stopped in a clearing by a small creek. Shikamaru was sitting on a small rock outcropping, hunched forward and staring at the grass in front of him. Choji was sitting cross-legged on the ground, wolfing down a bag of chips. Ino, having just returned from doing reconnaissance, took a seat on a large tree branch that had fallen into the clearing. The trio's 3 travel packs were sitting in a neat pile between Choji and Shikamaru. So, fearless leader, Ino prompted, with a mocking note to her voice. We've been on the road for about 4 hours now. More than enough time for you to mull things over. Are you ready to start dispensing orders yet? Shikamaru wearily looked up, then sighed. Actually, yeah, Choji, listen up, and, enjoy the snack break while you can. We won't be taking them once we get out of Fire Country. Choji looked up abruptly. Quote, sorry, Shikamaru muttered, but we gotta stay focused. So eat whatever you need during the main meals. Ino leaned back. Stay focused. Nara Shikamaru wants us to stay focused. Choji, recovering from his earlier surprise, grinned. Hey, maybe they were right about you deserving that jacket, Shikamaru. Shikamaru tugged uncomfortably at the jacket's collar. Maybe, maybe not, but it does change your perspective. Amused, but serious, Ino leaned forward. Okay then, fearless leader, what's the plan? The plan, Shikamaru replied, is this. Ya's fiefdom is in the north of steppe country. Way to the north, border north. As he spoke, Shikamaru pulled out a kunai and began sketching a map in the dirt. Right next to Rain Country. And just beyond some disputed territory here, you'll find Wind Country. Wind Country, Choji repeated, feeling uneasy. That means Sand Ninja territory. Ino, having remembered the basic geography of steppe country from her academy lessons, looked seriously at Shikamaru. You don't think other ninjas did this, do you? That Jia hired the leaf to fight off the sand or rain. I know, responded Shikamaru, looking at Choji. Shifting his gaze to Ino, he continued. But I don't think it was the sand or rain. Remember, this attack happened 3 weeks ago, at the latest. It probably happened before the Chunin exam. Both countries are at least nominally allied with us, and with steppe country. Neither of them, especially of the sand, would have wanted to start trouble before a major gathering like that. And even if they did, they wouldn't have done it by attacking something so pointless. No, Shikamaru concluded, looking back at his map. This was bandits. Shikamaru used his kunai to mark a point on the map. Jia's capital is here, well away from the rain border. The Junin in our briefing said that most of the province was uninhabited. That may be, but according to the map Jia sent in the mission scroll. Shikamaru added 3 lines to his sketch. There are well-settled valleys here, here, and here. Which means there isn't much of the province that is inaccessible. Choji narrowed his eyes, thinking. So, prompted Ino, figuring that Shikamaru was just walking them through what he had already figured out. So any serious patrol could cover most of the uninhabited lands. The bandits wouldn't find any refuge there. After pulling off a hit like what they did, there's only one safe place to fall back to. Shikamaru paused and glanced at both his companions. No man's land. The stretch of land bordering wind, rain, and steppe. Since none of the countries are in total control of it, no one can police it properly. It's just the sort of place outlaws would hang around in. Because no one can follow them in without causing an international incident. Even as, I'm afraid. Shikamaru put his blade on the ground and brought it around the earlier lines in an arc. As we approach, we're going to skirt the border of the border. We'll get a look at that, as well as the land between the valleys. If we don't see any signs of the bandits, we circle around to Jia's manor. We'll consult with him. Get a more detailed analysis of where he's looked and where he hasn't, and then go from there. Choji nodded, taking it in. You really did think this through. You've got us coming up from the south, pointed out Ino as she studied the map. Is that why we're headed southwest now? There is a large mountain range due east of Jia's lands. But south of that, there are several low passes. It'll be quicker to go southwest from here. Cut through the mountains where they are narrowest, then go north through steps. No point in dragging this mission any longer than it has to be. Choji smirked at his friend's pun. Nice one. Okay then, declared Ino as she abruptly stood up. A plan worthy of the Ino Shika Cho team. Let's get moving. Without waiting for the others, Ino shouldered her travel pack and disappeared into the trees. Shika Ino Cho, Choji corrected with a smirk. Don't worry Shikamaru. She'll get used to you giving the orders eventually. Shikamaru lazily got up and lightly flicked Choji's shoulder. Whatever. Late morning, 4 days later, in steppe country. Standing at the peak of a windswept hilltop, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji surveyed the scenery. The whole landscape was composed of north-south running ridges, extending as far as the eye could see. The ridges were jagged and windswept, covered mostly with prairie grass. Creeks frequently ran through the valley between crests, and there were scattered outcroppings of trees. But the groves consisted entirely of cottonwood and occasional willows, far cries from the towering forests of Fire Country. Despite the apparent harshness of the environment, the trio could pick out multiple signs of at least seasonal human habitation. Yup, confirmed Ino, holding a spyglass to her eye. Rain. Choji wiped some sweat from his forehead and glanced up at the cloudless sky. I wish. You sure? Shikamaru asked, without much enthusiasm. Ino as she tucked the spyglass into a side pouch of her travel pack. It's a fortress with 4 lines painted in bright blue on Lookout Tower. I'm pretty sure it's rain. Choji muttered. That makes it the 3rd outpost we've seen. Quote, so much for the disputed territory, Ino joked. I would say the Rain country has been making a power grab, Shikamaru muttered. But those outposts don't look recent. They've had that land for a while. So either G has sent an old map with the mission, or Steppe country just doesn't want to admit that the Rain controls the territory. Choji wiped his forehead again. So what does this do to our plans? Shikamaru sat down and stared lazily at the sky. Not much, he replied at length. The bandits could still be taking refuge in Rain country. And this part of Rain country is a lot closer to the missing settlement than the official border. We'll keep skirting this border, and keep a lookout for any sign of the bandits. What kind of sign? Bluntly interjected Ino. If we assume Rain is actively sheltering the bandits, they won't be sitting out in the open. We're not assuming that, Ino, Shikamaru retorted. You assumed that. IONL. Why mention the bandits could be on that side of the border? They could still just be outlaws that cross the border to avoid steppe pursuit. Shikamaru sighed and went quiet for a moment. Look, with what we know now, we can't say one way or another where the bandits will likely be. So we keep our eyes on both sides of the border. And we keep our heads down. We don't want to get spotted by any Rain lookouts. Ino raised an eyebrow. Any reason for that, or just general secrecy? General secrecy, Shikamaru replied as he stood up. Dealing with other ninjas is troublesome, and I'd just rather not have to do it. Now that's the Shikamaru we both know and love, proudly proclaimed Ino. Choji just smiled. Come on, Shikamaru muttered, shaking his head. Let's keep moving. Northeast. 5 hours later. Well, yelled Ino, trying her best to be heard as she leapt through the air. You said you wanted Rain, Choji. Me and my big mouth, Choji muttered. Shikamaru remained silent, but did smirk. His amusement, however, was fleeting. The clouds had looked innocent enough when they first appeared nearly an hour earlier. Not even Shikamaru had noticed them at first. But they quickly developed into a line of full-fledged thunderstorms, stretching along the entire horizon. After the rain started, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji barely had time to get their travel cloaks on before they were engulfed by the deluge. Ordinarily, Shikamaru would have called a halt in such a situation. But as it was, the trio hurried on. Before the clouds opened up, the trio had sensed something unusual. An odd smell on the breeze and a faint echo through bedrock of the ridges. Naturally, they moved in to investigate. But then came the rain. How much farther do you think it is? Choji yelled out. Can't be much farther, Ino replied. I think. The three ninjas landed on a ridge in rapid succession. Ino jumped forward immediately, while Choji paused for half a second to gauge the distance in the rain. Shikamaru landed in crouch, and took a quick look around. Hey, he yelled at his comrades. Hey, 20 meters down the way, Ino landed and looked back. It's back here. Shikamaru gestured with a wave of his arm. Then carefully began to pick his way down the slope of the ridge. Ino grabbed Choji as he landed beside her and pointed back to Shikamaru's position. The chubby ninja nodded, and the two of them made their way back on foot. Oi! Choji muttered a moment later as he and Ino came up behind Shikamaru. I can barely see anything in this weather. Yeah, replied Shikamaru without any enthusiasm. The Chunin was crouched down with a grim expression on his face. It is troublesome. Beside Choji, Ino caught sight of what was beyond Shikamaru and stopped in her tracks. I'll say, Choji agreed. It's like. Choji trailed off. There was a long moment of silence before he spoke again. That, normal. Of course it is, Choji, Shikamaru deadpanned. Cows turn themselves inside out all the time. Again, all three ninjas went silent. Before them lay a multitude of stripped cattle carcasses. The hides had been torn off, as had much of the meat, but not entirely. And not uniformly. What happened here? Asked Choji, horrified. Shikamaru, crouched in front of an upturned ribcage, responded in a level tone. Feeding frenzy. Unnerved, but unafraid, Ino began wandering forward. Then you've seen something like this before. Shikamaru remained where he was, and stared intently though the mangled corpse before him. I've seen a few kills, down on the family range. Every so often a jaguar will sneak in, will bring down a doe, maybe a fawn, then drag it off. They eat their fill, sometimes over a couple of days, then leave what's left. After that, the scavengers take over. From there, the carcass is slowly stripped clean. Shikamaru paused, letting the rain fill the silence. This is a fresh kill. The predator had its fill, but the scavengers haven't even noticed it yet. Ino looked back through the downpour. Shikamaru, I can see at least 15 of them from here. What kind of predator would kill this much? I don't know. Shikamaru, calm down, Choji, Shikamaru ordered. If it was still here, we would have known about it by now. Just search the perimeter, and look for any sign of what did this. Shikamaru, Ino interjected, in this rain. There's not going to be anything to find. The trail is cold already. We don't know that yet. Choji and I passed a watering trough coming here, and there's a lean-to right over there. Ino gestured angrily as she approached her teammate. We're standing in a cattle path. The grass here was worn away, and the land wasn't exactly bone dry before. Look around, Shikamaru. This was mud before. Now it's soup. Everything is already washed away. Even the blood is half gone. Shikamaru stood up, and glared at Ino. Just look. Surprised by the intensity in the Chunin's eyes, Ino took a step back. All right, but you know we're not going to find anything. Shikamaru turned away. We're going to find something, he muttered to himself. But we're not going to like what it is. The same, dusk, nothing, Shikamaru muttered. He and his two teammates were hunkered around a small fire under the lean-to. Outside, the rain had ended, and the sun's dying rays painted the sky a haunting mixture of red and orange. Shikamaru, with his back to the lean-to's wall, was gazing through the fire at the landscape beyond. Absolutely nothing. Ino, still wrapped in her cloak, sighed. I told you we wouldn't find anything. That rain, if we had just gotten there 1 hour earlier. Then we might be out there as well. Of the three, Choji had taken the scene the worst. Completely without appetite, he stared listlessly into the fire. Don't think like that, Choji. Ino glanced at the squad leader. We're all thinking that, Shikamaru. We found 38 dead cattle out there. And we heard whatever killed them from clicks away. This wasn't something natural. Silence fell over the trio. We should have found something, Shikamaru muttered, thinking out loud. A pack large not a do that would have a trail too big to be washed away by a few minutes of rain. We should have come across some sign of their approach. Or of how they left. Damn it, a feeding frenzy shouldn't have been that clean. Choji grimaced at his friend swore. When Shikamaru didn't continue, he reluctantly spoke up. Maybe it was a demon. Shikamaru scowled. Ino, you were there when the old man did his summoning bit. Anything here resemble what happened then? Ino shook her head. Nope, not a bit, but I can't say there wasn't one around. Or more than one, Choji added. But why? Asked Ino. Demons don't eat. And why have a demon attack a herd of cattle? And why disappear so quickly, with the bodies still there? Maybe he didn't like rain, Choji weakly offered. Shikamaru exhaled slowly, and the trio went quiet again. So do we assume this is the same thing that happened to the village? Asked Ino, finally speaking up. Strictly speaking, that's what we were commissioned to investigate. Not cattle. Shikamaru sighed. I know, but the chance that these two attacks are connected, it's just to hide a disregard. Choji nodded. So what do we do now? We need to look around when it's light. Shikamaru said at length. In the morning, we'll take another look around. Maybe there's something we missed. But if there isn't, we'll continue our arc. If there have been other attacks like this, we'll notice them. When we reach Jia's manor, he and I are going to talk. I need to know exactly what his people found in that mining camp, and if anything else like this has been reported. Recently, or in years past. There's got be some sort of clue out there. Ino acknowledged. Looks like we've fallen in over our heads again. And this time, we don't have a Suma-sensei to pull us out. Yeah, but we've got Shikamaru, Choji added. He's a Chunin now. That's gotta count for something. Not nearly enough, Shikamaru whispered to himself. Glancing up, he continued in a normal voice. Choji, try to get some sleep. Ino and I will take the first watch. Both of you, Choji asked. Does anyone have a problem with double watches? Shikamaru watched as Ino and Choji glanced at each other. And quickly shook their heads. Good. Until we know exactly what we are dealing with, we all need someone watching our back at all times. We can't afford to split up. Not with only 3 of us. Inside. Makes you wish they sent you with a full squadron, doesn't it? Makes me wish I had never joined the stupid ninja academy, Shikamaru retorted, looking into the distance. This whole thing is just too damn troublesome. Unloved. Late afternoon, the 2 days later, at the gates of Jia's capital. Hey, Choji observed, looking straight up. It's starting to rain again. Ino experimentally held out her hand and then nodded in confirmation. Mon, muttered Shikamaru. Following their stay in the lean-to, the trio had spent the morning searching the SCE. Nay for any signs of what had attacked the cattle. They found 2 carcasses they had missed in the night, but that had been it. Near nightfall, while continuing the original patrol, they spotted another kill site. It was, however, deep in the disputed territory. Shikamaru had spent considerable time studying it through a spyglass, and concluded the site was several weeks old. Not wanting to violate contested territory, and cynically figuring that the old site would be just as empty as the recent one, Shikamaru made the decision not to investigate the site, and to continue on the patrol. Neither Ino nor Choji questioned his decision. On the second day the trio veered back to Jia's capital. The patrol was uneventful, and by mid-afternoon they had come out of the highlands and ran into one of the main roads. Shikamaru promptly called a halt to his team's usual jumping, and had them approach the capital on foot. Again, none of the team complained. Having each pulled double watches the previous nights, none of them were feeling especially energetic. Try not to cause a scene, Shikamaru muttered as he finished putting on his cloak. Just cooperate with the guards, and let me do the talking. Sure thing. But why are we going in the front door? Shikamaru sighed and continued walking. Because I don't want to bother sneaking in. Just stay quiet, would ya? As the trio approached the gatehouse, a guard in light armor held out his arm. Hold up kids, the guard intoned. You aren't from around here, state your purpose in Hanryo. Shikamaru pulled the hood of his cloak back slightly so the guard could see his face. We're here to speak to Lord Jia. Right, the guard said flatly. Try again, kid. We're here to speak to Lord Jia, Shikamaru irritably repeated. We are from the village of the Hidden Leaf, and we wish to speak with him about the mission he commissioned of us. As he spoke, Shikamaru pulled the mission scroll out of his travel pack, and shifted his cloak to reveal the leaf insignia on his left sleeve. The guard stared for a moment, blinking. I'll go tell him. But, the guard eased towards the door of the gatehouse. No RRIORS are allowed in Hanryo without papers from Jia, so you'll have to wait out here for now. Obviously concerned that the Shikamaru wouldn't take the news well, the guard darted into the gatehouse, shut and bolted the door, and sprinted into the city. Shikamaru sighed and replaced the scroll in his travel pack. Nice going, genius, Ino complained. We could have snuck in just fine. But now, we get to wait out here. In the rain, Choji surveyed the brick gatehouse and earthwork walls. We could still jump this, he flatly stated. Shut up, retorted Shikamaru. The Chunin pulled his hood all the way over his face and casually sat at the base of the wall. We're waiting here, so just relax, and deal with it. 2 hours later, in Jia's manor. It's amazing how good a hot bath can feel after a week on the road. Happily observed Ino. A week, Choji joked from beside her. We weren't on a road for more than a day and a half, total. Shikamaru glanced at his 2 comrades, but said nothing. Lord Jia, upon being notified of Shikamaru's arrival, had reacted quickly. Though busy himself, he had sent word that Shikamaru and his team should be brought in immediately and escorted to his manor. The trio were to be given quarters in which to freshen up, and would later attend dinner with Jia and his sons. Ino was overjoyed at the prospect of being pampered in the home of feudal lord Choji, having more than regained his appetite, was looking forward a lavish meal. Of the 3, only Shikamaru was in a somber mood, with responsibility for the mission weighing on his shoulders. The Chunin could find no comfort in extravagant niceties. Shikamaru had tried to request an immediate audience with Lord Jia, but the servants he had talked to insisted that Jia was busy. Not wanting to press the matter with hapless servants, Shikamaru had let the matter drop, and simply waited. After some time, all 3 ninjas had been summoned to Jia's private dining hall. There, They had been seated on a bench along a small table. A second empty bench was positioned opposite them, and what was obviously Jia's chair was placed at the head of the table. Ino, being the kind of girl she was, felt the need to dress up for the occasion, and was wearing the V-necked red dress she had borrowed from one of the handmaiden, accessorized with some white leather gauntlets from her travel pack, and her forehead protector tying off her now skimpy ponytail. Shikamaru and Choji, being the kind of guys they were, had dressed in clean sets of their usual outfits, with Choji on his arm wrap and headband for the occasion. And the shampoos they have here, Ino continued, more to herself than to Shikamaru or Choji. Just amazing. One of the handmaiden gave me some hazel oil, back home. Just a vial of this would have cost me 2 weeks' salary from the flower shop. And she just gave it to me. The whole thing, like it was no big deal to her. Choji grinned as he tucked a napkin into his shirt and tried to look proper. It's good to know royalty. Leaning on the table, Shikamaru sighed. Well, I hope you didn't use it all, Ino. We are on a mission, after all. Ino abruptly got testy. Don't lecture me, Shikamaru. I know how to handle myself on missions. Before the exam, I was the leader of this team after all. Ino huffed and shook her head dismissively. I just used a few dabs. The rest of the vial is in my pack for me to take home. Shikamaru grunted dismissively. Choji glanced back and forth between his teammates, hoping they would leave it at that. Abruptly, he looked to the door. Hey, do you guys hear that? Yeah, muttered Shikamaru. Ino glanced at her teammates for a moment, then looked sharply at the door. The door was opened from beyond by a servant, and Lord Jia confidently strolled into the room. Jia was not the picture of royalty, looking neither regal, opulent, nor foppish. He was, instead, somewhat lanky, with a posture he seemed more in place on a street corner than in Great Hall. His clothes, exemplified by an open vest which hung halfway to his knees, were of fine cloth, but were not worn in such a way as to showcase their quality. Jia was followed by his 2 sons. Both had inherited their father's build, but neither held his disregard for proper posture. Ah, Jia proclaimed, walking forward. Welcome, come. I apologize for not seeing to you sooner, but I trust you were well taken care of. Oh, yes, replied Ino. Twisting in her seat to face Jia, she bowed her head slightly. Very much so. Good, good. Well, then. Jia grabbed a pitcher from a servant who had entered from another door and hurried to his seat. Let us begin. The appetizer shall be here shortly. Choji rubbed his hands together in anticipation. The elder son, standing next to the table, stopped short. Father, these can't be ninjas. They're barely more than children. Sit down, Laija, said Jia before any of the ninja could protest. And mind your manners to our guests. Jia gazed harshly at his son until the young man reluctantly took his seat. Pouring himself a drink, Jia continued. And do observe them. All 3 bear the hidden leaf insignia. As long as they bear that, you should do well not to doubt them. Thank you, Ino said with sincerity. Though we are still the youngsters of the village. Indeed, Jia muttered after taking a sip. Indeed, I believe introductions are in order. I am, of course, Jia Hiri. My elder son and heir is Jia Laija. And the quiet lad beside him is Jia Trippy. A bit of a rider. And a future tradesman, I should hope. Jia chuckled and looked the ninjas over. Well, I don't expect full names, but for the sake of conversation. Shikamaru, sitting at Jia's left and making a half-hearted effort to sit up straight, nodded. Ino, Choji, and I'm Shikamaru. You are, I take it, the leader. Shunin. Shikamaru nodded. At that point, Arvant arrived carrying a platter of fried potato slices. The servant graciously placed it on the center of the table and then hurried back to the kitchen. With the platter right in front of him, Choji eagerly picked up his chopsticks and dug in. Ino and Shikamaru knew better than to get in Choji's way, while the 2 sons watched him eat with a passive interest. Rather fat for a ninja, Laija muttered to his brother. Shikamaru held up a hand. Please, let's not use that word. The younger son raised an eyebrow. He's big-boned. Ino smirked, glancing sideways at Choji. How about deceptively plump? Choji growled, but not loudly enough to be noticed. We've been on the road for a few days now, Shikamaru added. Travel rations travel rations, for a reason. His compliments to the chef, by the way. Of course, Gia replied. I just hope he leaves room for the rest of the meal. Ino grinned. I wouldn't worry about that. So, the younger son leaned forward, looking over the three ninjas. His gaze lingered on Ino, but only for a second. I've heard that ninjas begin training young. But they actually send you on missions this early. You don't exactly fit the part yet. I doubt many people take you seriously. That guard sure did, Ino quietly responded. That can be the point, Trippy. Deception is one of a ninja's strongest weapons, lectured Gia. Quote, if they can get others to underestimate them, their job is all the more easier. That's almost the way Iruka put it, said Ino, addressing Gia this time. You seem to know quite a bit about how ninjas operate. Gia smiled. Yes, well, I have a general understanding. Comes from experience. I've hired leaf ninjas on, well, many occasions. Leaf ninjas? Skeptically asked Shikamaru. And the village of the Hidden Rain is barely 2 days away. At the mention of the rain, the elder son scoffed. Gia, acknowledging the response, leaned forward. Yes, well, I hire rain ninjas running messages and such, but for more important assignments, I trust the leaf more than the rain. They bring fewer agendas with them. They have less interest in the area. Gia closed his eyes and nodded to himself. Sitting up, he continued in a louder voice. Besides, leaf ninjas are generally of higher quality than the rain. Indeed, I've heard local ninjas dominated your recent Chunin competition, did they not? Oh yeah, agreed Ino. Leaf, sand, and sound, and that was it. Sand and sound, repeated the elder son, still not impressed by the guests. We've also heard they caused choir a row at the competition. Declared open war, more precisely. The table went quiet for a moment, as even Choji paused in his eating. Laija, the attack was repulsed, Shikamaru said in a grave tone. The sand has already surrendered to us. The sound is isolated, and have lost their front-line warriors. They will be dealt with. Ino nodded. It'll take more than killing the Hokage to bring down the leaf. We'll bounce back. Ino tossed her head to the side. We're already bouncing. Lord Gia glanced around for a moment, looking for some excuse to break the uncomfortable silence that followed. The excuse soon came in the form of the main course. It's fish, Gia informed as some servants began setting plates on the table. Perch, from my private pond. Small, but quite tender. And when spiced right, and with the proper grains, delectable. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, I will, said Choji. I'll bet, deadpanned the elder son. As the last meal was set, Trippy leaned forward with some interest. So were you in Konoha for the Chunin competition? The actual competition, I mean. Oh yeah, Ino replied while picking away at her meal. We were actually in it. You mean you and Choji? Gia interjected between sips of his drink. I mean all three of us. We were a team, one of the 5 leaf teams to make it to the 3rd round. Ino paused and tossed her head to the side nonchalantly. Only Shikamaru made it to the final round in the stadium, but Ino trailed off with a shrug. The younger son looked intently at Shikamaru. So then you were in the Chunin petition. You only just became a Chunin. Shikamaru glanced at Ino, annoyed with her for letting that fact slip. Yeah, the elder son snorted, and it was an exam, not a competition. Shikamaru irritably corrected. Choji, having finished off his plate, nudged Shikamaru. Good thing, too, he joked. Or else you'd still be a genin. Indeed, said Gia, not having heard Choji's comment. Indeed. So you 3 were a squad coming out of your academy. And they kept you together, even after one of you got promoted. Choji shrugged. Well, you don't break up a good team. After saying his piece, he raised his arm to flag down a servant girl for seconds. And the 3 of you, droned Laija, make up a good team. The best, Ino bluntly replied. There is no team Betty. Other than the Ino Shika. Ino broke off for a moment before reluctantly correcting herself. Shika Ino Cho combo. Laija snorted again. Ino leaned forward and gestured with her chopsticks. I'm serious. The only one to be promoted from that exam came from our team. And of all the teams that made it to the final round, we were the only one not to have a member injured, hospitalized, or crippled during the exam. Ino Shika-cho, mused Jia. I knew you three looked familiar. Your fathers were on a team together as well, weren't they? Yes, I commissioned missions from them several times when I was younger. Ino looked at Jia with a lopsided grin on her face. Really? Yes, answered Jia nodding to himself. Very interesting bunch. Shikamaru shrugged. Runs in the families. With a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, Jia looked fondly at his own sons. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I suppose it does. Later, in Jia, private study. Please, take a seat, Sug. Ested Jia as he walked past Shikamaru and plopped down into a plush chair. The study, like most such rooms, was cluttered. It consisted of multiple desks, seemingly arranged at random and covered with books. Shelves of different styles covered most walls, and housed various scrolls, artifacts, and trinkets. The only uncluttered section of the wall was occupied by a giant map of the fiefdom. 3 meters high and 4 meters wide, it was made of wood and meticulously carved to match the contours of the land. Jia's capital was in the center of the map, with Rain Country to the north, Wind Country to the west. The rest of Steppe Country to the south and east, and the tip of Fire Country on the far eastern edge. Shikamaru, thoroughly annoyed, stayed where he was. Jia looked up, not fully appreciating Shikamaru's mood. I was told you needed to talk with me. About the mission you put us on. I hope what kept you was important. No, Jia shook his head. Routine matters of state, but had I put them off, for the masses, perception is often as important as reality itself. Had I broken the routine, they would have been unduly concerned. Jia shook his head again. But about the mission, you have found a sign of those responsible. We found a sign of something, the Chunin deadpan, 40 dead cattle. Slaughtered in less than an hour, and left half-eaten on the plains. No trace of what did it. Suddenly quite pale, Jia sat upright. Was that how the villagers were found? Jia put his fist to his mouth, staring blankly at the wall beyond Shikamaru. I don't know, but, Jia shook his head and met Shikamaru's gaze. The traders who reported the incident were religiously inclined. They tended to the bodies before leaving the camp. Out of reverence for the dead, they did not divulge the details of what they found, only that it had been unspeakable. Where are these traders now? Gone. They were moving south. Likely they are out of the country by now. Have you investigated the encampment? We took their word on it. We then mustered additional guards for all the towns, and summoned you. Shikamaru carefully studied Jia's face for a moment. You said, but, there have been rumors, mumbled Jia as he closed his eyes. Hearsay. Really, about missing herds. Most cattle are out to pasture now, well away from the ranchers. But according to some, a few herds have gone missing. Not migrating to where they usually do. Then it's certain, Shikamaru concluded. You've got an infestation of something big. Jia stared Shikamaru with a haunted look on his face. Shikamaru wandered over the map, and picked up a pointer stick that was inlaid in tray below it. The site we found, he said, drawing Jia out of his stupor, was here. We spotted, but didn't investigate, Anther site in the disputed territory, here. Now, obligingly, Jia approached the map and grabbed a second pointer stick. The panning camp was here. I thought I had that marked in the mission papers. You did, but the map so sent had some discrepancies on it. Jia sighed, wearily. Some 20 years ago, there was a terrible drought in these lands. The neighboring fiefdom was hit especially hard. By bad luck, a plague struck as well, killing the lord, and any suitable heirs. The capital was abandoned, and most of the citizens fled. And then rain moved in. It is still supposed to be part of steppe country. But when the drought had ended, there was no great incentive for people to move back. It is naturally arid, on the edge of the Gara Desert. Without major rivers, the land was unsuitable for anything but open grazing, Jia sighed and indicated with his pointer. This section of land was part of the fiefdom, but has since been incorporated into mine. The rest has been nominally claimed by Rain Country. Nominally, challenged Shikamaru. We spotted several Rain outposts. I don't see any way you can contest their claim. You've investigated the border already. Well, I suppose you must have found. Jia shook his head again to realign his thoughts. I say, nominally, because they have been as unsuccessful of repopulating the land as we were. They have military outposts, but no cities. No inhabitants. The only people there are those hardy few who never left to begin with. And Wind Country hasn't laid any claim to it. No, as you can see, they have little to claim it from. This whole plateau here, Jia gestured to the northeastern corner or Wind Country. As the Gara Desert, no one lives there, not even nomads. I suppose they only control that land because no one else wants it. Shikamaru pursed his lips together, scowling. The Gara Desert, how'd it get that name? It is the unloved land, responded Jia in a voice less grave than before. Several hundred years ago, well before any of today's nations became what they are now, that plateau was one of the great centers of civilization. But then came the first of the great ninja wars, and the civilization crumbled. The cities were abandoned and the citizens fled far and wide. All of the southern nations, wind, crystal, spire, rain, steppe, grass, fire, tea, all of can trace part of our roots to that lost nation. And the name? Shikamaru asked, trying to get Jia back on topic. Jia grinned, momentarily, while losing himself in the retelling of the legend. The unloved land was the land that turned against the people who lived upon it. In a matter of a few years, it went from being lush and well-watered to being bone-dry. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. Now, Jia continued, excitedly. Now what I believe happened, is that the weather changed. That of course is obvious, but the reason, back then, the clouds came from the northern seas. Were funneled south, and then ultimately stopped by the Magoi Mountains here. Jia indicated a range of mountains near the southwest corner of the map. All moisture was then dumped onto this land. But because of a ninja battle, and it must have been a battle unrivaled ever since, because of a battle, Anther Mountain Range sprung up to the north. So all the water that had once gone to the plateau now falls here. Jia slapped the pointer against the map for emphasis. In what is now Rain Country. Shikamaru nodded in understanding. Makes sense. For centuries, the land treated its people well. And then suddenly it became uninhabitable. I suppose we would call that hateful, or something similar, but in those days, unloved, was the more artful phrasing. Makes a lot of sense. The Chunin muttered to himself, thinking of something else entirely. Jia proudly looked over his map. But his mood evaporated as he remembered the current situation. But we have more pressing matters in the present. Yeah we do, Shikamaru agreed, refocusing his thoughts. But since there is some history to the area, history common to all three kill sites, there may be a connection. Has anything like this ever happened before? This could be some sort of locust-like infestation. Something that comes around every 50 years or so. Jia shook his head. No, I know all the lore of my land, past and present, and there has never been anything like this. Shikamaru sighed and turned his attention back to the map. Mon, I am sorry, Jia said quietly. I did not believe this would be so serious. And, on what I imagine is your first mission. Troublesome, Shikamaru affirmed, but ninjas don't always know what they are getting into before they're in it. That's just how things go. Is this still the mission I paid you for? Shikamaru sighed. Technically, yes. Unless you deliberately deceive us, we can't bail on you halfway. You gave us the mission as you saw it. The two stared at the map for a long moment. When I commissioned your father's team, it was 3 of them, led by a Gunin. Shikamaru ignored the mispronunciation. All you have with you is 2 genin. Are you going to need reinforcements? I'm not sure if there are reinforcements available, Shikamaru bluntly replied. If there were, I wouldn't have been sent without a full squadron. And it would be hard to convince them to send me additional forces if I can't give them a first-hand description of what I'm going to be up against. But you have a first-hand account of what it leaves behind. Not what it actually does, or how it does it, or what it actually is. Until I know for sure that the enemy outclasses me, I am categorically expected to be able to deal with it. Shikamaru sighed. That's just the way it is. Then nothing changes. Not yet, Shikamaru muttered. But if we could send a message to Konoha. The wire to Fire Country is not secure. But I will send one my messengers, Jia instantly agreed. Shikamaru nodded. I'll write up a scroll tonight. Tell them what we found. That the mission is bigger than what was commissioned. That we are investigating exactly what it is, and that we may need backup if things turn out poorly. Jia nodded back. I'll have ink and a scroll sent to your quarters. And some wax for a seal. Jia paused for a moment. So do you know what your next move is? Investigate, Shikamaru replied. I don't suppose you know where any of the kill sites your people have talked about are. No, Jia muttered. No, thus far it is just hearsay passing from town to town. I've not heard where they were from. Then we head out at random. Where? I'm not sure yet. The 3 sites we know of are pretty spread out. We can't say yet if they are centered around any one point, and there could be more beyond the ones we know of. We just have to head out and find more information. Yes, and find me a comprehensive map of your land and bordering areas. Everything shown on this one if you've got one. If we find anything, I want to mark it down as accurately as possible. And the more references to landscape and all that, the better. Shikamaru paused for a moment. And try to find out more about the rumors. Track it down to its source. That may lead us to more kill sites. If I do that, Jia said slowly, then it will lead the people to believe the rumors are true. They are true. Yes, but if the people know that, it will scare them. They should be scared. I am. But you obviously do not rule a kingdom. When the people are scared, things just tend to go poorly. They need to be reassured that they are safe. That is why they accept my rule. Because I keep them safe. Annoyed again, Shikamaru looked at Jia. But right now, against this, you can't. They have to accept that. They don't, and they won't, Jia corrected. Taping his chin, he walked away from the map. Not if they think I'm doing nothing. Shikamaru remained silent, expecting Jia to continue. Ninjas normally work in the shadows, right? Jia prompted, abruptly twirling around. This time, don't. When you come near a town, visit it. Be visible. Let the people know that you are here, and you are working on the problem. The people will accept the danger, so long as it is transitory. So you'll track down the source of the rumors. Yes, affirmed Jia. Yes, and I will muster more guards, as well. I can spare enough to patrol the lowlands, at the very least. I have them patrolled already. But I can do so more visibly and consistently. Why haven't you already done that? Shikamaru asked. Because doing so wouldn't deter bandits from attacking highland settlements. Even in the most dire situations, I can't guarantee order outside the valleys. The highlands stay orderly because it isn't worth anyone's time to disrupt them. If someone actually decided to, then, Jia trailed off. Then the most effective way to deal with them is to commission a team of ninjas. Shikamaru was quiet for a moment as he sorted out his thoughts. So you already sporadically patrol your valleys. So far, nothing has happened there. Putting more patrols there will do nothing but comfort the people. The real work is still up to you and your team. I'm sorry, but my forces are not equipped to handle more than that. I guess I expected as much. Shikamaru sighed and took one last look at the map. Mon, just close your eyes. Late afternoon, 2 days later, north of Jia's capital. Approaching the border with Rain Country and the disputed lands. No, muttered Ino as she looked up at the sky. No. At least it waited, Shikamaru said half-heartedly. It'll be dark in 3 hours anyway. Shikamaru, are you sure we haven't crossed the rain border? Asked Choji as a few raindrops began sprinkling down. I mean, really sure. Since leaving Jia's capital, the ninjas of Team 10 had spent 2 days of uneventful patrolling. They started off heading north over the highlands, but had since veered westward as they zigzagged their course around the highland peaks. Though their search had been as thorough as the terrain allowed, all they had found were unwatched cattle herds and the occasional clan farm. I'm sure, Shikamaru wearily answered. We're just seeing thunderstorms. The afternoon heat lifts up the air, and then whatever water it didn't drop in Rain Country, it drops on us. So then we can blame Rain Country for this. Shikamaru chuckled. Damn it, I just took a bath 2 days ago. I can't get muddy again. Relax Ino, Shikamaru chided. We can call it quits for the night. We weren't going to see much else anyway. Ino perked up in the abrupt manner only she could pull off. Oh, so you've given up on reaching Tsurugi Valley tonight? I gave up on that about noon. We lost too much time trying. To look through those gullies this morning. I can't believe we thought cattle might have actually wandered into anything that overgrown. Ino and Choji exchanged surprised glances. Then why didn't you say that earlier? Demanded Choji. That the cattle wouldn't have wandered in. That we weren't rushing to Teruji Valley. Oh, Shikamaru shrugged. I figured it was obvious. Didn't feel it was worth mentioning. Choji gave his friend a long, withering look. So then, Ino said in wry tone. Stretching out her arms, she looked around the surrounding landscape. I guess that means we should look for a place to camp before the rain really comes down. I remember we had passed a ridge with this nice overhang in it. If we just backtrack a few. Ino abruptly trailed off and ceased stretching. Choji and Shikamaru instantly took notice of the change in Ino. What is it? Shikamaru gravely asked. Ino slowly raised her arm and pointed to the south. Do you two see that? She asked. Shikamaru squinted and followed her gaze. Choji, meanwhile, had the presence of mind to pull a spyglass out of his travel pack. Putting his to his eye, he carefully surveyed the sky. What are we looking for? Asked Shikamaru, not seeing anything immediately out of place. I thought I saw something waver. Something in the air. Shikamaru glanced at Ino. It could have been the rain. All those falling drops could have caused a shimmer. Quote, it's smoke. Choji broke in, causing both his teammates to glance his way. Still looking through the spyglass, he nodded imperceptibly. I see a thin wisp of smoke. Shikamaru scowled. How thin? Quote, very thin, Choji replied. It's barely there at all. Ino gave Shikamaru a meaningful look. Minimal smoke. They're using dry wood, and with the way it's been raining. Shikamaru grimly nodded. They would have made a conscious effort to find dry wood. Which means they didn't want to be noticed. Choji swallowed nervously as he lowered his spyglass. I barely saw any smoke. They found some really dry wood. Meaning they know what they're doing, and they're good at it, Ino concluded. These may be our guys. We don't know that yet, Shikamaru argued. We've jumped to conclusions too many times already on this mission. But they are in steppe country, Choji countered. In land we just crossed today. And people acting this way, in this land is suspicious in and of itself. I know. I was getting there. Ino nodded. Okay then, fearless leader. What's our move? With the rain coming down around him, Shikamaru stood motionless in contemplation. Stow your packs. We go in quiet. Operation Eagle Eye. Ino and Choji both nodded in understanding. Oh, nearby. 20 minutes later. With her cloak drawn tightly around her, Ino crept to the crest of the hill. Kneeling beside some brush, she glanced around. Spotting Shikamaru a few meters down the ridge, she instantly caught his eye. The Chunin silently put down his spyglass, and made several gestures with his hands. Ino responded with a gesture of her own, indicating she understood the coordinates. As she did, Choji finished coming up the hill and knelt beside her. Ino glanced at Choji, who nodded in affirmation. She then glanced back at Shikamaru, who did likewise. Ino nodded back, and then faced forward. For a long moment, she peered across the landscape. In the gray-blue of the storm, she could begin to pick out the ridges, but not even the faintest hint of the campfire they had spotted earlier. Steeling herself nonetheless, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Team Shika Ino Cho, she mouthed, not making a sound. Operation Eagle Eye, commencing. Ino formed a quick series of seals with her hands, and then fell limp. Choji effortlessly caught his teammate, causing less noise than the gently falling rain. Looking over at Shikamaru, he gave a single nod of his head. The Chunin again nodded in acknowledgement, and resumed his watch. Nowhere. As she always did when she used her mind transfer techniques, Ino felt a stinging cold. It was sharp, penetrating, and it didn't dull with time. It was also, she assured herself, completely psychosomatic. In truth, she felt nothing. Her mind being devoid of any sensory input. But that didn't stop her subconscious from trying to interpret what her senses weren't telling her. Ino blocked out the sensations as best she could. According to the coordinates Shikamaru had signaled to her, the encampment was nearly a click away. The mind transfer technique was normally slow, even longer in her head than in reality. But this time, farther than she had ever tried before and without a clear line of sight to her target, Ino expected it to feel like an eternity. If it would work at all. But Ino trusted her commander. Shikamaru wouldn't have given her coordinates unless he was sure they were accurate. And she remembered the look in his eye when he gave his orders. There wasn't any doubt in his mind that Ino could do what was asked of her. She trusted that faith. For all the ribbing that went on between them, for all the jokes and snide comments and self-depreciation, neither Ino nor Shika Maru nor Choji had ever failed when the team was at stake. Oh, the lee of a ridge, not long after. Ino felt sensation ebbing back to her, but it was a far cry from the jolt she usually felt when she entered a body. Ino instantly realized that she was in trouble. She couldn't control her new body unless she could feel it. Both her father and her sensei had drilled her in the art of adapting to whatever situation she jumped into. But she would be much less believable if there was a lag time when the body was unresponsive. Ino desperately reached out to assert her control over the body. As she did, she felt the consciousness of her host try to push back. Reacting with everything she had, Ino swarmed the consciousness. Obviously inexperienced in psychic combat, the conscious quickly drew back into the recesses, leaving Ino in sole possession of the body. But access to senses was still slow in coming. Ino belatedly realized that she was sitting down and slumped forward. There was a hand on her shoulder, obviously placed out of concern for her well-being. Her vision was still murky. "I'm all right," she mumbled, trying to brush the hand away. "I just drifted off for a moment." Barely understanding her own voice, Ino tried to continue. "I'm just tired, is all." What's wrong with her? The voice wasn't from next to Ino. It was quiet, and to Ino it sounded like it was coming through an echo chamber. But she could hear a note of concern in it. And fear. And anger. "It's gotta be them," another voice replied. This one was closer, from whomever had their arm on Ino's shoulder. "I don't know how or when, but, damn. Her forehead's cold. Get some water," the voice barked. Ino swayed, still feeling vertigo. There was an odd sound that she knew she had heard before, but couldn't place. Ino tried to pull back, realizing that the plan was falling apart. "Come on," said the second voice, as Ino felt someone tapping her cheek. The contact helped reorient her, and Ino began to make out a face in front of her. "Don't do this, Tamari," the voice continued. "Come back to us." Ino's eyes abruptly widened, and the center of her vision cleared just enough for her to make out the eye insignia of the sand. "Oh, the same." Moments later, "She's coming back," Gaara observed. Kneeling next to his sister, Kenkiro laid his hand on Temari's shoulder. "Don't move too fast, sis. We're still not sure what hit ya." "Wah," Kenkiro smirked. "Articulate, ain't she?" Lying flat on her back, Tamari blinked and tried to reorient herself. Both her brothers were looking down on her, Kenkiro from her side, and Gaara from a few meters away. Their small campfire was still lit off to her side, and a sand shell was still arching over them to block the rain. The only thing out of place was her lying on the ground. "What happened?" Tamari asked. "You blacked out," Kenkiro said in reply. "You just lurched forward, mumbled a bit, and then fell back." Tamari slowly sat up, putting her hand to her head. "Was it her?" "If it was, we haven't seen any other sign of them," Kenkiro replied. Leaning back on his haunches, he glanced idly around the campsite. "And thinking about it, that really doesn't seem like her style. Everything else we've seen has been an outright kill. Why try some covert poison attempt? It's not like she'd gain from it." "I haven't been bitten," Tamari mumbled. "Or stung or anything else." Kenkiro scowled. "Did you feel anything before blacked out?" Tamari sat still for a moment. "No, I just, suddenly, found myself on the ground." The kunoichi's expression hardened as she abruptly stood up. "Come on, we're scouting the area." "It wasn't her," Gaara quietly insisted. After a moment's hesitation, Kenkiro decided to back up his sister. "But it may have been someone else. There's gotta be some reason Tamari passed out, unless you think she just ate some spoiled rations." Kenkiro's last comment was made in jest, but he wasn't interested in seeing his brother's reaction to it. Even as he spoke, he picked up Karasu and leapt away. Tamari shook her head. After rolling her shoulders to get rid of any lingering stiffness, she walked to the side of the sand shell and retrieved her fan. "Douse the fire, Gaara," she said. "Then help us scout." As Tamari walked past him, Gaara abruptly grabbed her arm. Tamari, he began. You are all right. Startled and surprised at seeing what could pass for concern in her brother's eyes, Tamiri remained silent for a moment. Yeah, Gaara, she reassured as best she could. I'll be fine. Gaara kept his gaze on Tamari, but reluctantly released her. Tamari lingered a moment longer, then abruptly whirled her fan around and disappeared. After another moment, Gaara turned and walked out into the rain. As he did, the sand shell fell away, snuffing out the fire. A nearby ridge, 10 minutes later. Hiding between a rock outcropping and some withered brush, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji all breathed a sigh of relief. None of them, however, made any move to break cover. That was close, Choji whispered. That fangirl almost saw us. Shikamaru slumped against a rock. I can't believe how troublesome this mission is becoming. Ino leaned against another rock with equal exhaustion. What idiot ever came up with Operation Eagle Eye? She muttered. Shikamaru and Choji glanced her way. Fine, I'm an idiot, she conceded. Let's just scratch it from the plan book and move on. Move on to what? Choji asked. There's no way we can get away from them. Not all three of them. Ino leaned forward. Maybe we can get away in the rain. Ino, Shikamaru muttered in irritation. The rain is stopping. Somewhat surprised, Ino glanced up. Though the brush and rocks were still dripping, the rain had mostly stopped and the clouds had broken in a few places. Oh, Shikamaru sighed wearily. Closing his eyes, he sat into a crouch and put his fingertips together. So running is out, and so is a straight fight. Choji took a deep breath. We could try Operation Tail. No, Shikamaru interrupted. Operation Firefly, Ino suggested. Now really isn't the time for another half-assed scheme that we've never tried, Ino. Ino scowled at the rebuttal. Operation Head Games. No. The barrel down maneuver. No. Well, if we have to fight, I do have the red. No, Shikamaru said again, more forcefully. Ino and Choji went quiet for a moment. Okay then, declared Ino. I guess that means it's time for Plan B. Choji buried his face in his hands. Oh, no, not Plan B. With his eyes still closed, Shikamaru cocked an eyebrow. Actually, Ino and Choji both stared at their commander with quizzical expressions on their faces. Fire in the sky, nearby, 5 minutes later. Nothing, muttered an exasperated Kankuro. I haven't seen any sign of anything. And now, I'm soaking wet. How can it start raining again here, with the sun shining right over there? The ninja angrily gestured to the west, where the clouds had broken completely. I was told that when it rains the whole sky is supposed to be covered. This place is nuts. Get over it, Gaara irritably retorted. Looking at Tamari, he continued. There was someone out there. I know, I heard something too, but between the rain and the shifting breezes, Tamari trailed off with a shrug. I've never had to track anything in weather like this. After unsuccessfully completing the patrols, the three sand ninjas had reconvened on a broad hilltop overlooking where their camp had been. The rain had been spotty during the search, but looked to be mostly clearing up. Where the clouds were breaking, the sky was beginning to change color for the sunset. Sure, continued Kankuro. You know, Tamari, maybe it was the weather that did you in. I've heard it can do strange things to people. Really messes with your system. Tamari shook her head and sighed, while Gaara remained motionless. Or it may have been that mouse thing you ate. I did warn you about that. There's something not right about eating mammals. They've got fleas, and lice, and Uig, Kankuro shuddered in disgust. They're just walking disease pods. Me, I'm sticking to good old reptiles. Give me a grilled snake or monitor fillet any day. The ninja looked across the landscape in disgust. Man, I hate this place. Gaara turned his gaze to his brother. You really need to stop talking. Kankuro took a hasty step back and raised his hands. Okay, sorry, but it's not like I was wasting time we could have been using for something else. No, Tamari corrected. We need to get moving. Kankuro sighed audibly. In this screwy place. Come on, it's almost night. Just what do you think we're going to? Gaara abruptly held up his hand. Wait, I hear. Tamari. Tamari and her brothers all whirled at the sound of her name. A lone figure, walking as casually as if he were walking down a street, was approaching from the west. Tamari, he repeated. Is that really you? Imagine meeting you all the way out here. What are the odds? I haven't seen you in almost 3 weeks. You haven't written, or anything. The sheer absurdity of the situation left the sand ninjas at a loss. As the figure crested the hill, Temari and her brothers just stared at him. But then he got close enough to be recognized despite the late-day shadows. Shikamaru. Temari blurted in disbelief. Only slightly slower on the uptake. Kenkuro's eyes widened. Oh, crap. The boy tried to rush forward, but it was already too late. With his shadow branching away from him in 3 directions, Shikamaru ceased walking forward. And I thank you for that, he said in a serious tone. Really? Caught in Shikamaru's shadow imitation, Temari felt fear start to overtake her. Being caught by the technique had unnerved her in the Chunin exam, but out here, not knowing her attacker's motive, it terrified her. What are you doing here? She managed to gasp out. That's a question you'll be answering, Shikamaru coldly replied. In a few seconds, from off to the side, Gaara let out a strangled gasp. Gaara. Kankuro tried to look towards his brother, but was restrained by the shadow imitation. Okay, came a somewhat distant voice. Meet Tank. Balled up and spinning, Choji burst out of patch of brush. Unable to move, Kankuro could do nothing but watch as Choji headed straight towards him. Oh, crap. The shadow imitation released Kankuro a fraction of a second before Choji hit. The sand ninja was bowled over and sent sprawling. As Kankuro tried to push himself back up, he was tackled again, this time by Choji in his normal form. The leaf ninja ripped Karasu off Kankuro's back, and began pummeling the puppet. Left to himself for a moment, Kankuro got to his knees. Putting a hand to his head to steady himself, he watched Choji beat up the still-wrapped puppet. The hell? The ninja stood up fully, and then once again found himself unable to move. Kankuro's eyes widened as he remembered about Shikamaru. Choji, meanwhile, grabbed a small boulder, heaved it out of the ground, and slammed it on top of Karasu. Brushing his hands and breathing heavily, he walked back to Shikamaru. Wow, he muttered to the Chunin. It actually worked. I figured it would, Shikamaru quietly responded. Turning his attention back to the captured ninjas, he continued in a louder voice. Now then, let's start answering some questions. What did you do to Gaara? Temari breathlessly demanded. What happened to him? Shikamaru held up a hand, forcing his captives to do the same. Okay, see, I am the one who has you in the shadow imitation, and so I will be asking the questions around here. But, as a gesture of good faith, Shikamaru forced the ninjas to look to the right, giving Temari and Kankuro a glimpse of their brother. Gaara was no longer in the shadow imitation, but was staring forward with eyes wide and mouth open, completely unresponsive. Kankuro gaped at the sight. What did you do to him? Nowhere. This time, Ino burst into the host body suddenly and completely. Instantly, she lashed out at her host. But unlike Temari, this consciousness did not melt away from the assault. Instead, it pulled back and convalesced defensively. Wog, it cried out. No. Get out of my head. Get out of my head, it repeated in a weaker voice. Ino scoffed. Yeah, that'll convince me. Though not overly concerned with taking control of the body immediately, the plan only called for the body to be out of enemy control. Ino wasted no more time in attacking again. Mommy, her host cried out as it pulled away. Mommy, help me. Surprised, Ino slowed her attack for a moment. You're actually calling for your mommy. That is a riot. I've got to tell that one to Dad. Despite the let-up, the conscious continued to fall back into the recesses of the mind. Content at driving it out of control, Ino stayed where she was. But as she was consolidating herself, she felt a ripple flow through the mind. Then something laughed. It was the deep maniacal laugh of something eager for stimulation. And it seemed to come from everywhere. Ah, Ino observed. You must be, Mommy. Another presence seeped out of the mind's recesses. Completely unlike a normal consciousness, it was all enveloping. Little girl, it said. I am no mommy. I'm Shukaku. Hi, Ino replied, figuring this was what Shikamaru had warned her about. I'm Ino, and I have no idea who you are dealing with. Shukaku finished. But thank you. You've driven the child away. Without him confining me to the subconscious, I can take control. For that, I am forever in your debt. I hope that comforts you, on your way to oblivion. Shukaku attacked, swarming Ino from all sides. Ha! Yelled Ino as she squirmed between Shukaku's thrusts. What makes you think you're in control here? I'm about ready to spank you like the red-headed brat you are. What? Shukaku roared in rage, and thrust at Ino anew. But Ino dodged, even more easily than before. Fool! Shukaku yelled again. Do you have any idea what you are up against? Nothing I haven't seen before. Ino grimly replied. Even if you are a demon, someone really should have warned you. As she spoke, Ino drew back, and began expanding. Never play mind games against a Yamanaka. The hilltop. They're not very good at being interrogated, Choji observed. Quite troublesome, Shikamaru agreed. Now, he said, addressing his captives again, tell me what you're doing here. Why should we tell you anything? Kankuro defiantly asked. Because if you don't, I'll kill you. Kankuro snorted. You don't scare me. I saw your fights. Anything you try to do to us, we'll do right back to you. Quote, Kankuro, Tamari warned. Don't. Choji, give him a blade. Kankuro's defiance dissipated. What? Shikamaru, pleaded Tamari. You don't need to do that. Please, we'll talk. Walking over to Kankuro, Choji pulled a kunai out of his side holster and offered it to Kankuro. Shikamaru reached out and grabbed air. So did Tamari. Kankuro reached out and grabbed the kunai. Kankuro's eyes darted between Shikamaru and the blade in his own hat. Wait a second. I get the message. We can talk. Shikamaru smirked. For emphasis, he held up Hi's hand and began twitching a few of his fingers. Wide-eyed, Kankuro stared at the kunai that was twirling around his fingers. Good, Shikamaru said. Chuckling to himself, Choji turned to walk back to Shikamaru's side. But after a step he stopped short. Hearing a slight buzz, he looked up. The leaf ninja's face went pale. Choji abruptly sprinted forward and speared Shikamaru. As Shikamaru was driven back, Kankuro and Tamari both lost their footing and collapsed in a heap. For their part, Shikamaru and Choji tumbled for several meters. Choji, Shikamaru yelled as he shoved his teammate away. What the hell was that? The Chunin trailed off. There was a beast crouching where he had stood a second before. It was essentially a giant locust, standing a meter high and 2.5 meters long, with 6 legs. Carapace-covered wings on its back, spines articulating every joint, and glistening mandibles dominating its head. Shikamaru weakly finished. The insect hissed, reared down, and leapt forward. Choji rolled to the side. Shikamaru rolled on his back and sweep-kicked the insect in the head. Glancing up, he saw a swarm of similar creatures dropping out of the sky. Shit, he swore. Dropping the shadow imitation, he pulled out a kunai and jumped to his feet. Choji, fall back to Ino. She's defenseless right now. Shikamaru punctuated his order by throwing his blade through the jaw of the insect he had just kicked. To his great dismay, the creature spasmed, got up, and leapt at him again. The Chunin dodged to the side, whipped out another blade, and hacked the still spasming creature's head off. Looking around, Shikamaru saw that the swarm was already upon them. Choji was fighting off 2 of them halfway down the hill, Kankuro was backpedaling away from being triple-teamed. And another insect was in midair headed straight towards Shikamaru's face. A sudden gust of wind blasted the insect from its path. So these aren't friends of yours, Shikamaru dryly observed as he fell into a defensive stance. They're what we were tracking, Tamari replied. Whirling around, she swung her fan in hard downswing to blow away the 2 of the insects menacing her brother. At least until you showed up. A truce, then. Tamari spared Shikamaru a quick glance. For now, she answered with a smirk. Okay, yelled Kankuro in triumph, shoving the boulder off of Karasu. He activated his chakra strings and the puppet leapt to life. With 30-centimeter blades extending out from the puppet's arms, it lunged past Kankuro and slicked an insect in half. Sensing other target behind him, he spun on his heel, flinging Karasu towards his target. The puppet struck true, driving 2 blades into the insect. Hissing slightly, the insect glared at Kankuro. Oh, crap, Kankuro repeated for the 3rd time in as many minutes. This particular insect was more human than insect. She was humanoid, stood upright on 2 legs, and had a human-shaped head. But she was covered in chitin plates and spines. Had covered wings on her back, 4 arms, and mandibles covering her cheeks. With deliberate motions, she pulled the 2 blades out of her chest, grabbed Karasu and flung it to the side. "Prepare to die, human fleshbag," she uttered. "Temari," Kankuro yelled. "We've got drones." Ino felt the usual rush of sensations as she re-entered her body. The first thing she noticed was that she was face down on the ground. A sure sign of trouble, as team custom had always been to leave her body flat on her back or leaning against a rise of some sort. Her second GN that something was amiss came when something roughly kicked her to the side. Suppressing a grunt, Ino looked up. A giant insect was pulling its mandibles out of the dirt where she had just been. Beyond that, Choiji was falling backwards, with an identical insect biting his arm. Another was about to cut at his legs from behind him. 2 more were in the air looking ready to join in. Ino instantly let fly with a blade and a shuriken. The blade blew through the joint between the thorax and abdomen of the insect behind Choji. But because of Ino's awkward throwing posture, the shuriken only grazed the insect on Choji's arm. Still, the insect's reaction gave Choji an opening. On instinct, Choji fell to the side. With his free arm he shoved the insect's head out of position, then drove his entire weight on top of the insect. Having directed his fall just right, he also managed to crush the insect that had initially menaced Ino. To avoid the other attackers, Choji rolled after he fell, pushing off the crushed insects for good measure. The first of the diving insects landed just behind Choji. As he continued rolling, the ninja managed to grab one of the insect's legs. Utilizing his momentum, he swung the insect over him and slammed it into the ground. The insect's leg broke off, letting it bounce away, rattled but not dead. The second diver was intercepted by Ino. Leaping off the ground, she caught it with a vicious upstroke from a kunai. The slice split the front of the insect's head, and sent it spinning upwards. Ino jumped up after it, knocking it away with a spin kick before it could right itself. Ino landed in a defensive stance, anxiously searching for any insects she hadn't seen yet. Choji, meanwhile, lunged forward and drove a blade down through the head of the wounded insect. It spasmed, prompting additional stabs. "Oki," Ino said, panting. "That was a rude awakening." "Sorry," Choji muttered, carefully backing up to Ino. "Not your fault," Ino replied. Not. Icing the insect she had cut in half was still moving, she forcefully stomped on its head. "Sand do this?" "I don't think so." Ino paused a half second to catch her breath and collect her thoughts. "We need to regroup with Shikamaru." Choji nodded, only just catching his breath himself. "Yeah, fastball special. More women," Shikamaru muttered as held a pair of blades defensively in front him. "How troublesome." "Shikamaru," growled Temari, "if you start with that chauvinistic, won't hit a woman, crap now, I swear I will help them kill you." Temari and Shikamaru stood nearly back to back, surrounded by 3 of the humanoid drones. Temari held her fan at eye level, resting the end of it on her outstretched wrist, ready to swing it at whomever approached first. Both she and her fan already bore claw marks from the drones' attacks. Shikamaru was yet unscathed, but was showing signs of tiring. "That's all right," mocked one of the drones, in feminine, wind-like voice. "We won't need any help. After all these years," continued another drone, with an identical voice. Circling the 2 humans, she locked eyes with Temari, the sand. "And the leaf," trilled another as she stood before Shikamaru. "Standing together, dying together," finished the first, her mandibles twitching with amusement. "Just as they always have. I have no intention of dying with her," Shikamaru dryly retorted. Noting that a 4th drone had dropped from the sky to join the circle. Scowling, he noticed it bore the telltale scrapes of Temari's windblade attacks. "Hey, shut up, and stop trying to cut them," the Chunin ordered. "That's not doing any good against these girls. Just try to break them." One of drones leaned forward and hissed at Shikamaru. "Come and try it, fleshbag," taunted another. "Just follow my lead," Shikamaru grimly continued. "We attack on 3. Scowling, Temari nodded once. The 4 drones immediately ceased circling and crouched down into defensive stances. Hissing menacingly, they waited for the attack. Shikamaru locked his gaze on the drone to his right. The drone hissed back, A drone facing Tamari inched closer. With her eyes anxiously darting between the two drones facing her, Tamari stepped back. Shikamaru. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes, ignoring everything but the drone before him. The wounded drone to Shikamaru's left let her wings buzz for a second. Any time now. Shikamaru leaned down. The mandibles of the opposing drone began twitching. Idiot. Did you drift off? Startled by Temari's outburst, the drone Shikamaru was staring down hissed and charged forward. With a simple flick, Shikamaru sent both blades flying straight up. His hands immediately clamped together, forming a seal. Shadow imitation, he called out. His shadow shot forward, catching the drone before she could react. Shikamaru dove forward and rolled. The drone dove as well, but because she was standing more upright than Shikamaru, her dive took her up and over him. Shikamaru reached both hands out to the side as he rolled, clipping his left wrist on a tuft of brush. The drone reached out as well, caught both blades in midair, landed, and flung them at the drone that had been to Shikamaru's left. The blade from the drone's right hand struck its target in the cheek. The second blade went wild, Shikamaru's blotched grab having led to the drone having a poor grip on the blade. Shikamaru dropped the shadow imitation, shuffled back and drove his heel into the back of drone's knee. The knee was knocked forward, forcing the drone into a crouch and throwing her head back. Shikamaru followed up by elbowing the base of the drone's skull. The second blow knocked the drone flat on her face, giving Shikamaru the chance to step back and pull some shuriken from his holster. In rapid succession, he put 2 stars into her neck, and a blade through her head. Meanwhile, jarred into action by the first drone's hiss, Tamari darted forward. Using her wrist to give her fan the initial lift, she twirled it around and hit the drone to left with a vicious chop. The hit, from the short edge of the closed fan, was enough to crack its neck. The drone went limp and fell to the ground. The last drone began forming seals. With a flick of her wrist, Tamari opened the fan completely and then brought it around in a hard backswing. The gale force wind knocked the insect back a step, breaking her concentration. Taking a step back herself, Tamari reset her footing and swung the fan back and forth in rapid succession. The drone held her ground for a moment, and then was blown away. Tamari spared a glance Shikamaru's way, thinking she might have bought herself enough time to land one blow on the other insects. To give the boy a fighting chance, if nothing else. But instead of seeing Shikamaru beset by attackers as she expected, she saw him calmly staring down the drone with the blade through her mandible, absently rotating his wrist. Damn, the boy muttered through clenched teeth. That stung. Burn in the light. While her sisters were descending upon the humans that were attacking their flock, one drone held back. Her attention was instead drawn to the side of battle, where a lone scourer was crawling unmolested over an odd mound of sand. Upon landing, the drone discovered that the mound was actually a half-shell, surrounding a red-haired human. The drone watched as the scourer tried to walk to the edge of the shell, only to be thwarted as the shell grew in front of it. The drone circled around the spectacle, catching a glimpse of the boy inside the shell. The human's eyes were unfocused, and his mouth hanging open. To the drone, he seemed completely unaware of the scourer trying to get at him. Sand. The drone wondered out loud. Moving on its own. Have they learned how to? The drone experimentally reached out, only to have sand rush to form a barrier between her and the boy. Shukaku, she muttered, you'd teach your tricks to humans. We never would have thought you'd fall so low. The drone hissed an order to the scourer. It obediently dug its mandibles into the sand, easily swallowing a mouthful of it. The drone hissed again, unfettered her wings, and flew away. The scourer did the same, escaping unnoticed from the battlefield. Kenkiro ducked to the side as a clawed hand sliced through where his head had been a moment before. The drone's second hand lanced out, forcing Kenkiro to dodge again. The boy promptly dodged another strike from the first hand, nearly losing his footing in the process. As he reset himself, he saw the drone's second set of hands finishing a sequence of seals. Not again. Kenkiro leapt up just in time to avoid being skewered by chitin spikes that popped out of the ground. One of the last scours rushed him in midair. Kenkiro stiff-armed the insect, catching it by the side of its head and holding it at bay. With his free hand, he whipped a blade out of his side holster and cut the insect across the eyes. The insect spasmed and fell away. Kankuro landed in a crouch. If you insects think skewering Karasu is enough to put me down, you're wrong. Pulling out 7 more blades. The sand ninja let them fall and activated his chakra strings. Kankuro threw out his arms, and the blades splayed away from him. Come get some, ya bug-faced freaks. The drone that had just attacked him raised her arms defensively, and managed to deflect the first few attacks. But she ran out of arms before Kankuro ran out of blades, and was quickly cut to pieces. Ah, crap, Kankuro muttered as the drone reverted into bundles of straw. Not knowing where the impending counterstrike would come from, he pulled the blades back into a haphazard array around him. But the blades were no shield against the fireball that struck Kankuro from behind. After being knocked off his feet, the sand ninja covered his face and hit the ground rolling. Even before the fire was out, his instincts told him one of the drones was charging. Flicking his wrist, Kankuro sent 4 of the blades flying up from the ground. The drone quickly pulled up short, and snatched one of the blades out of the air. Snapping the string attached to it, she flung it back at Kankuro. The blade was again snatched from mid-air, this time by Ino as she ricocheted across the landscape. After one last one-handed handspring, she finally came to a stop by digging into a rise in the dirt. Instantly, she flung the blade back to where it had came. Right back at you, Ino broke off, seeing her opponent. Gah! Taking a step back, the drone neatly caught the blade. Another one, she hissed in disgust. They're like cockroaches. Looks who's talking, retorted Kankuro as he reeled in the 7 blades still in his control. Ino broke away from staring at the drone to glare at Kankuro. Hey, she exclaimed, you're not Shikamaru. I guess blondes aren't that dumb after all, Kankuro joked. Ino scowled and pulled a blade out of her side holster. We've got to work on Choji's combat reconnaissance. Die, fleshbags, screamed the drone as she charged Kankuro. As she did, Aneth. Drone flew up from behind her and dove towards Ino. Ah, the girl exclaimed again. They fly, too. Yup, Kankuro muttered as he started swinging his blades at his attacker. And watch out, they can do jutsus as, the roar of a fireball cut Kankuro off mid-sentence. Oops, too late. It was too late the moment you were spotted, the drone threatened as she weaved between Kankuro's blades. Kankuro didn't respond, turning his full attention to keeping the drone at bay. But despite his efforts, she continued to inch forward. As one blade ricocheted off her arm, she darted toward her prey. Kankuro whirled to the side to avoid her, losing his footing in the process. The drone was about to take advantage of Kankuro's fall when a slightly singed Ino caught up to her from behind. In mid-air, the leaf ninja caught the drone's head between her knees. Ino used the drone's neck to check her momentum, then tucked down and tumbled over. Ino landed in a crouch, throwing the drone over her in the process. Ino instantly leapt to the side as the drone that had been chasing her plowed into the ground she had just stood on. With a hiss, the second drone quickly turned to follow. Still lying on his side, Kankuro saw his opening. The drone was using flight-enhanced jumps chase after Ino, and using her wings forced her to lift the carapace that covered her back. Fully intent on chasing Ino, the drone had her back to Kankuro. The ninja flung all 7 blades, striking his target just where he needed to. The drone screamed and violently closed her back carapace. Kankuro's charka strings were cut, but the blades were already inside the drone. The drone fell to the ground, spasming in the midst of her death throes. Kankuro pushed himself up and smirked in triumph. As he did, the drone Ino had thrown sprung up behind him. Kankuro flung himself to the side, letting his chakra strings flutter wildly. The drone dove forward again, forcing Kankuro to continue falling back. Give it up, fleshbag. There's no one to help you this time. Kankuro slid to a stop. Wanna bet? The ninja clenched his fists and pulled back his arms, drawing his chakra strings tight. As he did, the drone was jerked back. Several chakra strings held her legs to the ground, while 4 others pulled each of her arms away from her body. Kankuro grinned. I like puppets, but I can do webs just as easy. The drone hissed and tugged at her restraints. But after a second she stopped. Straining herself, she tried to look behind her. This going to be so sweet, Kankuro muttered to himself. A second later, Choji barreled into the drone. Kankuro's chakra stings held, but the drone's joints did not. Her limbs snapped away as her body was crushed under the meat tank attack. After rolling for another 20 meters, Choji popped back to his normal form. Dizzy beyond belief, he immediately fell flat on his face. Kankuro couldn't help but chuckle. Not bad, fat ass. Temari let out a yell of exertion as she heaved her fan upwards. Her shockwave managed to blow back the fireball that had been shot at her, but it had been uncomfortably close. Sensing a change in the wind, she glanced to her left. Another fireball was already on its way. Temari belatedly dispersed the blast with a hard backswing. Even as she did, a third fireball came at her from above. Already overbalanced from her hasty parry of the second blast, Temari had no chance of deflecting the fireball. Falling to the side, she let go of her fan and handsprung away. Upon landing, Temari looked up, trying to find her attacker. Too slow. Human chakra flowed into the ground beneath Temari. A fraction of a second later, a patch of chitin spikes sprang out of the dirt. But the fraction of the second was all Temari had needed to gather her own chakra. Using a variation of the balancing technique, she used her chakra to keep herself poised atop the ends of the rising spikes. As soon as the growth stopped, Temari exploded forward, skipping over the spikes and back where she had dropped her fan. The sand ninja neatly snatched up her fan and brought it up in a defensive stance. Ragekian sent her worst, didn't she? Temari growled. Enraged, the drone hissed vehemently. Temari whirled on the sound, lashing out with her partially opened fan. The air in front of her wavered, a sure sign of disrupted genjutsu. Heeding Shikamaru's earlier advice about delivering crushing rather than deflectable blows, Temari closed her fan and lunged forward. Her blow struck true, dispelling the last of the genjutsu. Damned cow! The drone spat as she lurched to the side. Her upper left arm was broken above the elbow, but her other arms were still usable. With mandibles open, she lunged back at Temari. Temari quickly sidestepped the advance. Handling her fan as if it were a staff, she pulled it back, twirled it to change her grip, and then brought it down on the drone in a chopping blow. The drone took the hit on the shoulder and staggered back a step. Temari twirled her fan again and swung at the drone from the side. Reaching two good hands across her body, the drone blocked the blow. The drone spun forward, making sure to keep Temari's weapon pushed to the side as she did. But her offensive was brought to an abrupt halt as Temari managed to rear back and high-kick the drone in the face. The hit knocked the drone back. Temari fell away as well, having overbalanced herself to deliver the blow. But Temari was fundamentally unharmed by the exchange. The drone was rattled. Temari quickly rushed forward and clubbed the drone with an upswing from her fan. The drone's neck snapped, and Temari delivered a chop to its face just for good measure. Too slow, yourself, insect, Temari spat. Looking up, Temari saw a winded Kankuro running up to her. Whoa, her brother observed as he came up short. That's something I couldn't have done. Temari winced, tenderly rubbing the side of her thigh. It wasn't something I could either. How many more? Just one, Kankuro informed, pointing off to Temari's left. Following her brother's gaze, Temari saw Shikamaru standing off against the drone he had wounded earlier. The other two leafies are back that way, Kankuro continued, gesturing over his shoulder. Gaara's still out of it, but he's not hurt. So, are we going to take out that wing head? The twinge of concern Temari felt for Shikamaru quickly faded. No, she muttered, not yet, not until she knocks that kid down to size. It took Kankuro a half-second to realize what Temari had in mind. But then the boy laughed. Hey, payback time. Shikamaru deliberately stepped to the side, keeping his shoulder squared to his opponent. For her part, the drone faced Shikamaru head-on. The human kept his hands in a defensive position, one outstretched ready to block, and the other by his side ready to strike. The drone held all four arms out to her side, poised to do anything and stretching the limits of her opponent's attention. Resolutely, Shikamaru kept his gaze on the drone's eyes. She stared back just as defiantly. Neither spoke. The drone's right arm darted to the side in a feint. As the Shikamaru reacted, the drone shot forward, with her upper left arm poised to strike. The human took a step to his left to get out of range. But the drone twisted at the last moment, slashing at Shikamaru with her right arms. With unnatural calmness, Shikamaru pushed away with the foot he had just sidestepped with, and just barely dodged the drone's claws. Shikamaru danked away as the drone's momentum carried her past him. The human spun, utilizing his own momentum to add force to a low sweep kick aimed at the drone's knees. But the drone dodged easily, jumping over his kick and lashing out again. Shikamaru lost his balance as he dodged, and tumbled over the dirt. The drone lunged forward, trying to overwhelm the human. Shikamaru managed to avoid being struck, but the constant dodging prevented him from countering, or even of regaining a steady footing. Damn it, Shikamaru sputtered as finally managed to roll to his feet. I win, the drone hissed, her wounded mouth causing her words to slur together. Blinking first doesn't mean I lost, Shikamaru countered. Shuffling backwards in a low defensive posture, he locked gazes with the drone. Only that I've changed tactics. The drone deliberately approached her opponent, prompting him to edge away further. One only changes tactics when the one you're using don't work. It's an admission of defeat. You know I've taken your measure. Shikamaru smirked. Or it could be that I've taken your measure, and I'm just doing this to psych you out. Shikamaru darted forward, preventing the drone from doing the same. The human lashed out with an open fist, striking the drone in the wrist. The drone instinctively took a step back and returned the favor. Shikamaru deflected the first strike, and the end pulled to the side to avoid the next one. By that point, the drone had regained the initiative, and started attacking with all four arms. Shikamaru was quickly reduced to merely dodging the blows, endlessly sidestepping and spinning away. In short order, Shikamaru was panting hard. The drone then landed a glancing blow on his shoulder. The human was knocked back a step, then lamely kicked at the drone. The drone easily checked her momentum to avoid the hit. As she did, she took a swipe at the leg-offending leg. Shikamaru was overbalanced and spun haphazardly away from the drone. Seeing the opening, the drone sprang towards her opponent. As she did, Shikamaru violently dug his foot into the ground and spun to a stop. A three-quarter spin left him facing the drone, his own body close to the ground and legs ready to spring. Shikamaru feinted to the right, while with his left arm he reached behind his back to his waist holster. The drone noticed the feint, and altered her step slightly to her right. Intent on hitting Shikamaru right as he leaned into his real attack, she launched herself at his left side. Shikamaru hesitated for a fraction of a second, ensuring the drone was fully committed to her attack. Then one foot stepped to his right. As he did, he pulled his empty left hand away from his back. The drone was unable to react in time and her lunge took her past Shikamaru's left side. But as she passed, the boy ducked under her outstretched arms and hooked his left arm around her left shoulder. Her momentum was checked, pulling her to the side. Shikamaru was pulled to the side as well, and added to his own momentum by leaping up across the drone's back. Turning nearly sideways, Shikamaru hooked his right arm around the back of the drone's neck. He released his left arm, letting his momentum carry him up and over the drone's right shoulder. As soon as he was clear, Shikamaru tucked over yanked down as hard as he could. The move focused all his momentum, pulling the drone down by her neck. Her head hit the rocky soil with an audible crack. Winded, Shikamaru quickly rolled over the drone. With one motion, he pulled a blade out of his side holster and stuck it in the drone's forehead. Shikamaru held the pose for a moment, breathing heavily. I win, he finally heaved. The hilltop. This way, Ino yelled as she shuffled forward. Though in a hurry, she kept her guard up and moved forward in a defensive stance. Just because she didn't see any more insects didn't mean there weren't any more around. Besides, Choji wasn't in much of a position to defend himself, so the job fell to her. Come on, she prompted again, looking back. Shikamaru needs R. Ino cut herself off as a fan abruptly appeared in front of her. Wait, Tamari casually commanded. Ino glared at the sand ninja, then glanced past the fan down the hill. At the base of the hill, Shikamaru was being driven back by a drone. Ino angrily returned her gaze to Tamari. Why, can't you see he's in trouble? We've got her outnumbered, Ino declared, balling her fist. Let's rush her. Choji, wheezing and still dizzy, caught up with Ino. Not particularly caring why she had stopped, he knelt down and tried to stop his head from spinning. Yeah, sarcastically droned Kankuro. That'll work. With us falling over each other, all trying to hit her but not your friend. Tamari closed her fan and pulled it back to her side. We will help him, she said confidently, turning her attention back to the fight. But only when there's an opening. Ino scowled, but didn't try to move past the two ninjas. She did, however, pull a blade out of her side holster just to be ready. Below, Shikamaru fell away from the drone, spinning to the ground in a heap. The drone wasted no time in charging after him. Tamari smirked, cracking open her fan. Okay, get ready to. The two combatants moved like a blur, and then the drone was on the ground. Shikamaru rolled over her and stuck a blade in her head. Wow, Tamari finished, slightly mystified. Damn, Kankuro muttered, so much for knocking him down a peg. Good thing he didn't fight like that in the exam. Ino ignored the sand ninjas. She knew how Shikamaru fought, and for him taijutsu was beyond a last resort. Concerned, Ino grabbed the just recovered Choji and rushed to her teammate's side. Shikamaru, she called. Shikamaru, are you all right? Still crouching next to the drone, Shikamaru abruptly looked back. He took in the scene in an instant, and scowled. Ino, he ordered in a weary voice. We need to make sure the area is clear. You and Choji do a perimeter sweep. Recon Pattern D, version 4. Go. Choji stopped short, looking slightly confused. Plan D. That's not a re. Ino quickly turned and grabbed Choji by his scarf. Come on, you heard him. Choji. Recon Pattern D. Ino said the last words through clenched teeth, and promptly dragged Choji away. As Ino and Choji left, Shikamaru nodded to himself and D turned his attention back to the fallen drone. Kankuro watched the two-leaf ninjas scurry off. With one eyebrow raised, he turned his gaze back towards Tamari. His sister nodded. Kankuro smiled. ND began confidently walking down the hill. Tamari hailed Shikamaru as the two sand ninjas approached. He did not, however, turn to face them, keeping his gaze fixed on the dead drone. You said you were tracking these things. What do you know about them? What are they? Demons, Tamari curtly replied. Part of Ragekian's swarm. We've been tracking them for over a week. Demons, Shikamaru skeptically repeated. They seem pretty physical for that. Tamari's fan opened with a metallic chink. Yeah, but they're not all that's physical. Shikun, Tamari let her fan slowly graze the back of Shikamaru's collar. The truce is over, she said with mock sweetness. Don't try anything clever. I will hurt you if you do. So just keep your hands where they are, Kankuro finished. Shikamaru remained motionless. Checkmate, he quietly concluded. Tamari smiled, keeping her fan at Shikamaru's neck. You can't always get the best of me. So now it's your turn to answer questions, Leafy, said Kankuro in a vindictive tone. You're a long way from Konoha. What are you doing out here? Kankuro stepped forward as he continued spitting out questions. And why are you three alone? Where's your commander? Shikamaru remained quiet for a moment. Kankuro, I believe it was. I want you to look very closely at something. Kankuro crossed his arms incredulously. Tamari whipped her arm to the side, hitting Kankuro right in the face with the flat of her fan. The boy was knocked off his feet, tumbling helplessly across the rocky ground. Ew! Tamari let out an undignified skay. Out of shock as she found herself once again unable to control her body. Kankuro quickly stood back up, clutching his nose. I don't know how you did that, punk, but now you're. The sand ninja was abruptly cut off as Ino drop kicked him in the back. He stumbled forward a few steps, regained his footing, and then stood motionless. Breathing heavily, he glared at Shikamaru, who still had yet to move a muscle. How the hell did you do this? He angrily demanded. Maybe, came Ino's condescendingly upbeat voice. If you two actually paid attention, you would have already figured that out. Kankuro scowled, struggling weakly against the shadow imitation. What do you mean? Ino walked in front of Kankuro, then mockingly used the side of his hood to wipe some blood from his nose. He said it right in front of you. Operation D, version 4. He told us to create a D version. You actually missed that. Ino laughed and walked away. Choji, I think you can drop the illusion now. The air wavered, revealing a standing Shikamaru. He still had his back to the other ninjas, and was holding one arm away from his side. Two previously hidden shadows stretched from him to Tamari and Kankuro. Like I said, Shikamaru quietly uttered, forcing Tamari to toss aside her fan. Checkmate. In a subtle gesture of triumph, the Chunin tugged on the front collar of this flak jacket. Forced to do the same, Tamari squeaked indignantly. Ino couldn't help but giggle. Choji wearily rejoined his teammates. Okay. We got them, he observed. So what now? Kankuro growled. Yeah, what now? We know you can't hold us like this forever. I know, Shikamaru grimly answered. But I don't have to. I just have to hold you there long enough for Ino to cut your throat. Kankuro bared his teeth. Tamari, Shikamaru continued, without changing tone at all. You said you were tracking these demons. That sounds fascinating. Tamari gave a weak laugh. Yeah, it is, really. Truce. For now. To be continued, and thank you for watching.